Evening, everybody. Welcome to another show. Hopefully, sound and everything is coming through okay. Give me a holler if you can't hear me. It's been a little bit since I've done one. I wanted to do a third episode of PineCreek's, pandering nonsense because he did this video that I'm going to be featuring. It's a short video, but it's probably going to take me a minute to get through it. It's only about 4 minutes and 30 seconds, but the title here is telling. Challenge for both Fundie Christians and Woke Progressives, 15 claims that may be hard to admit. Now, for clarification, because I was a little confused, I thought that maybe Doug was going to do something clever here, and that he found 15 claims that Fundie Christians and Woke Progressives share, and that they would be hard to admit. But that's not that. Each category has its own set of 15 claims, and he kind of goes jumping from the progressive to the Christian. So we're going to take a look at these, and we're going to talk about it. So let's get into that here pretty quickly. Let's give a shout out to a few people who have joined us live. AR is here. Good to see you. Aaron is here. Good to see you as well. Thank you, AR, for letting me know. I had a feeling it was doing all the tests were shown okay. John Fabiano is here. Good to see you. Let's see. You got that end questions for atheist feeling. Yeah, it kind of does do that. Kent Hoven, CPA. Hello from Hillbilly Hell. Yes. Kent Hoven, CPA, if he doesn't mind me saying. He does usually admit this. He's coming at us straight from the Ozarks. Desperately Seeking Sodom. Howdy, Jefferson. I really like that username. I wish I'd chosen it. God equals. Good to see you. Fabio is here. Good to see you, Fabio. I haven't watched these. Break it down, Jeff. Well, without further ado, let's see. Christopher Mowdy is here. Good to see you, Christopher. Thank you for sending me the link to that newest video that you did. I watched it. Really good stuff. Sorry that I'm late catching it. But great as always. Really no notes. So as usual, let me know if you want any help. I don't know that I can provide you much help. I think you're kind of killing it with the editing game. So Clive Gordon is here. Good to see you. Jail Warren's here. Good to see you, Jail. Let's see. Dustin Tom. Oh, by the way, thank you again, Jail, for the invite coming on Sunday. I would love to join. Your show is great, but yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to be tied up for the next probably several weeks between some new projects that I'm thinking about taking on, kind of a side hustle, and trying to get more videos out, and physio, as the Canadians put it, physical therapy. So, yeah. Let's see. Kent Hoven CPA is here. Good to see. Sorry. I knew you were here. I don't know what I was reading one thing and highlighting something completely different. Okay. All right. I think that's everybody that's here kind of live, other than Jay is here. Good to see you, Jay. Okay. So without delaying too much here, let's get back into this. Let me shrink myself down here. So here is, this is how it starts. We're going to get right into these claims, and here we go.
I have a challenge. I have a challenge for woke progressives, and I also have a challenge for fundamentalist Christians.
I'm accepting this challenge on both groups. I mean, I used to be a fundamentalist Christian, or was kind of raised in that setting. No longer am. And Doug would refer to me as a woke progressive, so I guess I have to accept that because he knows more about politics in his own mind than anyone else. So this is how it's going to work.
I have a list of 15 things for each group, and I want you to see if you can admit this or if you believe this.
Okay, so basically what I set up, he's going to do that. I do want to take one pause out here. Oh, Michael Dayton's here. Good to see you, Michael. I feel like it's been a little bit. Let's see. And yes, I was thinking about this too, JL. All good. Something else you could one day look at: Andrew Wilson debates. Start crushing his nonsense debate tactics. I tuned in very briefly to the one that was airing. Taco hosted one, I think, over on TikTok or Discord with him and Peterson, and I caught. There's one part that I really want to highlight on. I might just do a video about this one portion that I think he really thought he had Peterson cornered on something. And Peterson was clearly confused about where he was going with it. And I think I know what Wilson was trying to get at. And it was pretty funny. Not intentionally. I'm not giving Wilson credit here. It was wild. So yeah, no, I do want to do that because I noticed that his tendencies, his bad habits are getting worse. So, all right. So Doug has set this thing up that these are 15 things that each group would find hard to admit. He's going to bounce back and forth between each one. So let's go.
Now, if you don't believe it, that's fine. But if you do believe it, I think these 15 bullet points for each group are very difficult to admit. Here we go. Number 1, I believe people with dysphoria have a mental problem. Dysphoria is not a good thing. It's a problem. What kind of problem? It's a mental problem.
I mean, this is vastly oversimplifying it, but dysphoria is the unease that's created by it. So, and it is a recognized medical condition. Dysphoria usually in our political commentary gets reduced to when we're talking about gender dysphoria, but dysphoria does exist as a symptom that other people have. People who are depressed, regardless of gender issues or not, can have dysphoria, situational stressors, things like that, situational dysphoria. So it's not just that. I think that some progressives would have a problem with the way that he's wording this, because Doug, despite the fact that he's trying to come across as straight talking and he's a straight shooter and he's giving it to you with plain spoken English, is actually sort of injecting, and most of that is because I think we know him from the past and we know his capacity to sort of get into the weeds and get into the nuance, especially when he's debating stuff in Christian theology. But with this stuff, he just wants to keep it very surface level, but then chooses to use language that sort of starts triggering people to be on the defensive. If somebody told me and they were like, with a mullet, I was like, well, that gender dysphoria thing, that's a real son of a bitch, right? I mean, that's a hell of a thing. I wouldn't wish that on an enemy, that's a mental problem, bud. Okay. Yeah. Is he 100% accurate? Not 100%, but I think, I think he's in the right place. Is that all that it is? Is Doug trying to be dismissive and say, oh, that's all that it is, and it'll go away like a muscle sprain? Or is he doing something much worse, which I feel he is signaling to certain fans of his when he says dysphoria, he is talking about trans identity issues, gender nonconformity. And if he's trying to say that, he's like, well, these woke progressives just don't want to admit this. Dysphoria is just a mental problem. So anything else associated with it is just a mental problem too, which is a non sequitur that doesn't follow. Again, the idea that, people are gender nonconforming not because they're dysphoric. The dysphoria comes from people who are gender nonconforming in those situations, if that makes sense. And it should to long-term fans of Doug's, because I'm pretty sure Pine Creek Doug has told Christians this. So here we go.
For fundamentalist Christians, number 1, I believe a serpent talked.
I don't think real fundamentalist Christians that believe in the literal, inerrant truth of the Bible would have any problem admitting that. I think more of your open Christian types would have an issue with that. Like, how do you explain this? And then they would have to get into the nuances of, oh, well, in this particular genre of writing by these particular authors, the scholars say that they use this as an etymological an etiological explanation for something. Am I saying that right? It's not etymological. Whatever. It's just a description to talk about the origins of whatever. A Fundie would be, yeah, the snake talked. So what? And then, like, I feel like Doug hasn't been in a good conversation or any conversation with a really hardcore fundamentalist in a minute.
Number 2, I believe poor black people sometimes make choices that leads them to be poor.
Trivially true, and the fact that he used the term black people is designed exactly like I said before, to get people defensive, like, whoa, why did you make it about that particular group? It is trivially true that all people make choices that affect their financial situation positively and negatively. This would occur for all people in poverty, regardless of their particular background and makeup. I'm wondering, does Doug think that the only time that woke progressives are concerned with poverty is if they're concerned with people of color? Because that hasn't been my experience, but I think maybe because he's been crawling around in some culture warrior areas, mostly on the right wing, it's just easier to sort of straw man this issue and then talk about, oh, well, progressives do this and this is what's wrong with them. What he's saying there is that's just designed to get somebody's reaction up, and it's a trivial thing to say. It's no different than saying, well, some people are fortunate enough to experience circumstances that really benefit their wealth. Now, if you change that and say, well, white people sometimes experience, then would he get weirded out by that? Some white people experience circumstances that they could only describe as good fortune or luck that greatly contributed to their wealth. Does Doug have a problem admitting to that? Because it's trivially true. All people in all financial situations will encounter situations that will sometimes, just by luck, just by circumstance, benefit them positively in the wealth area of their life. So the fact that it may be hard to admit. No, it's really more hard to kind of swallow the way that he's putting it because he did it so badly.
Number 2, I believe a man lived in the belly of a great fish for 3 days.
Again, I don't think Fundie Christians would have a problem admitting that Jonah survived in the whale for literally 3 days. I don't think that they would have a problem with that. So I really feel like Doug is not giving us his best in terms of going after what would a real fundamentalist Christian have a hard time admitting to, unless he just thinks, well, they don't really believe this. I think it's actually very easy for a fundamentalist Christian to just accept that, because then you're just accepting the story as being literally true. I think it's a lot harder to try to get into the nuance of it, but maybe that's just me.
Number 3 for the woke progressives. I believe women take more sick days than men and therefore should be paid less than men, all else equal.
Well, in a country like the United States, where we don't really have rules mandating sick leave, if those women are taking more sick leave, they're automatically getting paid less, even if they're being paid the same rate per hour. Right, Doug? So I don't understand what that means. Also, the idea of paying people based on some kind of idea of what they may or may not be able to do on the job versus what their actual work output is, this seems like the wrong kind of focus, and makes me think that maybe Doug's skills in business are not in the human resources area. Let's see here.
Number 3, I believe God ordered the stoning of rebellious children and Jesus is God. Number 4, I believe merit.
Why would that be a problem for fundamentalists? I mean, a real fire and brimstone fundamentalist would not have a problem with this. Now, somebody if it's one of the quote unquote flag waving phonies that he likes to talk about, they might have an issue with Jesus being wrathy like this. But I don't know that real fundamentalist Christians would. And by real, I mean, if we're talking about fundamentalist Christians in any real sense, we're talking about people who accept the Bible, every word of the Bible, as being literally true. So if it says it, it's got to be the case. If he's trying to say, well, I think they'd have a hard time admitting that. I don't think they'd have a hard time admitting it, what Doug might be getting at here with the fundamentalist Christians, do they have a hard time actually acknowledging that that's the truth? Right? Like, that seems to be the thing. Like, you don't really believe that there was a talking snake. I've known Christians who really did believe that that happened. As a young fundamentalist Christian, I believe that those things were possible, because with God, anything is possible, right? So,
Merit trumps diversity when it comes to hiring. Number 4, I believe merit trumps diversity when it comes to hiring.
since when are they at odds? The only people that have set merit and diversity at odds are, in large part, either certain groups of centrist liberals and right-wing types, and these kind of right-wing culture warrior types that want to say that merit isn't being recognized. The diversity part is people being selected because they have the right skin color. They fill out some kind of quota. But that's Doug not being plain spoken about that. He's reading into that. He's letting his feelings come out, like, "Ooh, diversity, no. Merit, yes. Diversity, boo." I don't like the way that that's used in common parlance. But if you don't let your feelings get in the way with that, there's nothing wrong with merit and diversity coinciding. And the idea that you can recognize diversity in your applicants and still reward merit is not some kind of contradiction, and doesn't induce some kind of cognitive dissonance.
Number 4, I believe that God said that the Israelites could take virgin women for themselves and give 32 virgin women to God, and Jesus is God.
I don't know that, again, I don't know that fundies would have a hard time using fundies as a short here. I'm not trying to be dismissive. I don't know that they would have a problem with this unless it was, maybe they were a fundamentalist Christian. This was the first time they were running across this story. I've known fundamentalist Christians that don't really have a problem with what was the Jephthah story or whatever, where he has to sacrifice his daughter. He swears that he's going to offer up the first thing that comes out of his house as a sacrifice to the Lord, and the first person that steps out is his daughter. And he goes through with it. I mean, there's a whole thing. They have to go through some drama, but it happens. And I don't know that many fundamentalists see this. I've seen fundamentalists online defend this, and I remember wrestling with the idea as a kid in Sunday school and in church, and there are plenty of ways to reconcile this. So I'm not sure where he's going with that, but it's not helpful. Now, pardon me while I minimize something here.
Number 5, I believe one cannot change their sex. Number 5,
He believes that one cannot change their sex. Well, I don't know that anyone's really saying that. Sex, as far as biological sex, down to the chromosome at this point, can't be changed. But secondary sex characteristics can be changed, and gender and legal gender identity can be changed socially and legally. So the fact that he's just saying, this is something that I don't think that woke progressives can admit to, that you can't change your sex. Well, it depends on what you're talking about. This isn't that tough. You can't change your chromosomal sex. I have not met a single person who is trans that would say that you can, nor is that really the point. So that's less progressives having a problem admitting to something that's just plain truth, and more Doug trying to retreat back into a really flabby way of attempting to provide a pithy explanation for something, a little explainer.
5, I believe that God sanctioned abortion if an unfaithful woman was pregnant.
I don't think any fundamentalist is going to do the fundamentalist take on what he's talking about is the drinking of the bitter waters, the test for the unfaithful wife. Most fundamentalist Christians do not believe that abortion has anything to do with that. And a lot of other theologians would say that abortion is not really the concern of the entire thing. It does seem like a miscarriage could be caused an effect of the woman drinking the bitter waters. But I mean, even Jewish scholars wrestle with the purpose and meaning of that particular portion of the Old Testament. So, what are you asking them to admit to? What you have to admit, fundamentalist Christians, that here's a part in the Bible where God's okay with abortion. Like, no, it's just a portion in the Bible where at worst God's okay with a child conceived in sin. Its life is ended as a result. If you can even go that far, there are fundamentalists that would resist that interpretation. So again, that's a swing and a miss.
Number 6, I believe a smarter or richer immigrant is better for our country than a dumber and poor immigrant, all else equal.
What about a rich but really stupid person like Elon Musk, or a really poor person who's wicked smart? Then what? I mean, is that just a push? And better for whom, right? Like, high skill immigrants contribute in one way, low skill immigrants contribute in other ways, including all the, a lot of essential jobs. An economy's needs are complex. The country's needs are complex. So if you just try to do some kind of simplistic ranking of intelligence, Christopher Maudi's stuff is talking about the background and the problems associated with this kind of thinking, where you just, the cold hard facts are, this is a person who is deserving of our time because they're coming in with brains and money already. So they're ready to contribute. And this person is dumb and poor. Therefore, they need to be kept away from us, else the dumb and poor get splashed up on us. And then we become dumber and poorer as a consequence. This is simplistic, stupid, exclusivist, elitist thinking from Doug. He's not that special. And not only is this, if you are going to be elitist, this is probably one of the cheapest, stupidest ways to present it. If you're going to try to make the case for right people here, wrong people way over there. Not that I'm going to give them pointers on how to make that more saleable, but
Number 6, I believe that many dead people came out of the graves when Jesus died. Number
fundamentalist Christian. Again, a fundamentalist Christian is somebody who takes the Bible's writings literally true. When they get to that point and it says that the dead rose, that's in one of the Gospels, when the dead rise before, after Jesus is, the tumult after Jesus is, he expires after crucifixion, they would say yes. So I don't know what would be hard for them to admit here. Again, this is a really bad video. Okay.
Number 7, I believe that men are superior to women in sports that require speed and strength, comparing apples to apples.
I did an entire video on this, so if you're interested, that's an older video. You can take a look, because he did a thing where he was kind of gently browbeating a person he considered a liberal into accepting this, and just made the statement, I want you to admit that this is true. I want you to repeat this statement. Women are inferior at sports than men. Women are inferior to men at sports. However he phrased it. And I thought that was one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard, because it basically is it is such a trivially superficial thing to say. It doesn't matter. Like, do men, and my basic point was, do men have advantages? Generally speaking, do men have physical strength and speed advantages to most women? Generally, yes. That's just kind of a general fact of biology. Does that mean then that men necessarily are better at sports than women? No. It might give them advantages in certain sports. So, and like he says, apples to apples. Okay, well, if we're comparing apples to apples, then we need to break it down by the sports we're talking about, not say something so stupidly vague as, well, women just aren't as good at sports as men, because men got the strength and the speed. Okay.
Number 7, I believe that God, and Jesus is God, ordered that a husband should be the first one to throw a stone at his wife if she leads him away from belief.
I don't know that I don't know what a progressive. I can't speak for a fundamentalist Christian. I, as a fundamentalist Christian, would not have. Well, I wouldn't have been really even like kind of clued in on that. So that one I don't know. The one thing that I will say is like the bitter water. Some of the stuff that Doug is doing here, the bitter waters one especially. The bitter waters portion, it became kind of a common thing for atheists to use on believers, Christian believers, and trying to say, look, your book actually has an abortion being performed there and your God endorses it. Therefore, there's something wrong with your stances on things. It turns out if you're a fundamentalist, no, you don't really have to admit to that, but that's sort of the benefit of being a fundamentalist. And if you actually get into the theological explanations or the critical scholarship studies on it, it's also not there either. So it was a limb that a lot of atheists went out on, me included, and we were wrong about. Doug is still doing it, and it's still cringe. He should stop doing that. As far as this one about the guy throwing the stone at his wife to keep her from leading him away, I mean, that's probably literally true. I could think of some fundamentalist Christians maybe having a hard time accepting where it's at, but then being shown saying, oh, well, I guess that is true. Whether or not they'd carry it out, that's something slightly different. But admitting to it being true, I don't know that they'd have a problem with it.
Number 8, I believe dependency is not good and welfare can lead to dependency.
Welfare can lead to dependency on welfare itself. Okay. The purpose of welfare, this is essentially couched in a lie, right? Welfare is usually always offered as a temporary remedy for poverty and the suffering that can come with poverty. For Doug to simply say, well, you know what I think is an issue here? Dependency. This has been a classic one from conservatives for a long time. What I don't want to see you do is become dependent on charity or dependent on welfare or some social insurance plan that keeps you away from these kinds of things. Okay. Does Doug have the same rejection? And that would be the question I would ask. Doug would rather see a person die of starvation than see them buy a small TV with welfare funds. I don't think that Doug would have a hard time admitting that. So if he watches this later, I believe, this would be the statement. I would rather see a person starve to death than see them use government money to buy something like a small TV. Now, I'm putting that one out there because that's like the ultimate for a lot of conservatives in terms of welfare abuse. You could do it just as I would rather see a person starve than get free bread from the government. I don't think Doug believes that. But when he's talking about dependency, that term, if I may be your guide to the wonderful world of wacky right-wingers, dependency means they're getting something for nothing and they're getting it from hard-working Doug. Doug gets less because they got something. They took it from Doug. Those filthy, dependent, lazy ingrates. That's the psychology anyway. He could probably debate me on that, but I would be interested to hear if there's any kind of feelings built into that, because in my experience with conservatives, myself as one, and knowing conservatives growing up, knowing them in college, there was a lot of emotional reactions to issues like that. People being on the dole, not deserving it, being lazy, being strung along and dependent, being parasites, all kinds of cool words used to describe people who didn't deserve things and should be scrubbed away, that kind of stuff. Would Doug have a hard time admitting that? Probably not. He has shifted into a might makes right side of right-wing online philosophy.
Number 8, I believe that God, and Jesus is God, stopped Abraham from sacrificing his son Isaac, but didn't stop Jephthah from sacrificing his daughter. Number 9.
Yeah, but fundamentalist Christians would say there's a point to both stories. Both of the stories. So I don't think they would have a problem believing that. There's a reason why Jephthah needs to go through with the sacrifices of his daughter. There's a reason that God spares Isaac, because it serves as an example of how things are going to work in Abraham's covenant with God.
9. I believe that Christianity in the United States has done many good things.
Christianity or Christians? So there are a lot of Christians that have done good things, and I don't think any woke progressive would have any problem admitting to that. Many of them also do not have anything against religion. In fact, most of them are pluralists and believe the more religions, the better. Unlike a lot of right-wing types, especially right-wing types like Andrew Wilson, who wants a state religion somehow. Doesn't get really good about talking about how that's even possible without an enormous amount of bloodshed and government force, but whatever. So yeah, I mean, Christianity along with a lot of other religions has inspired things like charity and activism and community support. But again, that's trivially true because that's true for many other religions and many other people affiliated with those religions, such as Jews, Mormons, Hebrews. Well, I already did the Jews. Hindus, everything. Anybody else. And those groups are also oftentimes connected to some bad things in the individuals and the organization themselves. So it's always been a mixed bag. This wouldn't be I believe Christianity in the U.S. has done many good things. I wouldn't say that Christianity has done many good things because I think that's an awkward way to put it. I think that many Christians have done good things in this country. Religions don't really actively do that kind of stuff. It's up to the adherents to choose what they're going to do with their religion once they've got it.
Number 9. I believe that God, and Jesus is God, said that slaves may be bought from neighboring nations. Number 10.
Yeah, a lot of fundamentalists don't like that and will argue against it because, or they will accept it because they have to, right? They're fundamentalists, so they believe that it's literally true. They will accept it, but they will say that it's not what you think it is. It's more like a social contract. It's more like welfare. It's not kidnapping. It's definitely not that. God said it's no kidnapping. So I don't know that they would have a problem saying, no, the Bible does say that you can get your slaves from them, but then they would probably dive into what's a slave and how does it work? It would be one of those moments where the fundamentalist gets, particularly nuanced. If they're a hardcore fundamentalist, they'd be like, no, those people are slaves. And they just take it,
I believe that personal responsibility matters more than systemic factors.
Matters in which way? He said, I believe personal responsibility matters more than systemic factors. So that's basically saying what matters most is what you do, not the circumstances, not your circumstances. Okay. Well, in terms of evaluating what? If we're evaluating a person's moral sense of justice or their moral sense of good, then yeah, you can kind of do that. But if you're trying to say like, well, I believe that personal responsibility matters more than systemic factors when we're talking about a person rising up from poverty or becoming self-sufficient. Well, that's a complicated issue, and I don't know that that really actually matters. If you're saying I believe personal responsibility matters more than systemic factors, if you're saying this person was thrown into this situation and they had these choices to make, some of them were hard, and they made this choice, and it turns out it was the best choice that they could make. They're an upright, moral person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but at the same time, what was more important? The choice they made, what they did, or the circumstances surrounding them that put them in a position to make that choice out of the options that they had. I think that these are so inextricably linked that it is incredibly childish to try to say that one matters more than the other. This is like trying to say that merit and diversity are at odds with each other and that personal responsibility and systemic factors are at odds with one another. You don't have to try to obsess over one and deny the other in order to make a point about why, say, some people get lucky and some people are unfortunate, and maybe those unfortunate people need help from time to time. I think that's what Doug's trying to avoid. What Doug would like to do is be like, no. If you disregard the circumstances and only focus on what they did, now we have a clearer picture of how we can avoid helping that person because they're not worth our pity. And pity's the only thing that we're going to offer them. Not money, because taxation is theft.
Number 10, I believe that God, and Jesus is God, said to kill every man, woman, and child of the Amalekites. Number 11, I believe that not all cultures are equal in value.
Yeah, depends on what you mean by value. So all cultures have their own traditions and values and strengths and weaknesses. If value means, like, say, human dignity, then all cultures are equal in the sense that how they are propping up or how they are trying to express the dignity of those people, right? If you're just talking about economic or tech output, that's totally different. Obviously, there's differences. The other thing that I would say, with regards to the notion of human dignity in that culture, like how they're trying to get that around, most of these cultures are going to try to end up reinforcing like the same kinds of things that Doug is. So in my circumstance, we live in the same society, we live in the same culture, sort of, except we don't really. In Doug's American culture, he's more like a Russian or a Turk, at least politically. So and I mean contemporary political threads. He's more authoritarian. He believes in might makes right. And he believes that certain people who are not equal in value should be brushed aside. I believe that trying to evaluate people based on some kind of equal value metric is fraught with enormous problems, and ultimately can lead to people like Doug or scientific engineers and these social engineers taking steps to remove people who are very helpful to our society and very good for our culture. I don't think Doug believes that. So the one thing that Doug believes is that he is affirming human dignity by making sure that people don't get shortcuts. People don't get made dependent by a welfare system. People are told to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. People are made self-reliant. I believe that people should hopefully be able to become self-sufficient and make their own way as best they can. But if they do need help from their community, from their family, from the government, from some kind of state apparatus, that those things don't make them less of a person. Those things actually help keep them from falling through the cracks. And both of us are looking at ways to kind of prop up human dignity, but we're approaching them from two different value systems. I don't mind if somebody is not churning out widgets 100% of the time, rising and grinding, and always making money, and being a net input as far as taxes, as opposed to ever taking out a benefit from the federal government. And Doug seems to think that anybody less than a wealthy, self-reliant, self-established individual is less than. So he has modified his determination of human dignity into what I think is a very minor scope. There's no reason for anybody to be in that situation unless, I think what Doug would say, unless they're handicapped, your child, or I really do believe this, if they're a woman, in Doug's mind. I think he's that big of a chauvinist.
Number 11, I believe that God, and Jesus is God, said that dwarfs and people with blemishes on their face can't be a priest.
Yeah. But the fundamentalists would be like, yeah, in the Old Testament, but a lot of fundamentalists are like, but the New Testament's different.
Number 12, I believe affirmative action can be unfair.
Well, I mean, yeah, in the sense that it was more beneficial for white women than it was for any other minority group. Is that what he means by affirmative action is unfair? Or is he trying to say there were moments when institutions used affirmative action to establish things like quotas, and those things were bad and weird, and some people got rejected for strange reasons, and therefore affirmative action is just always bad? Given that this is coming from a guy who has a very difficult time, well, I don't know that he has a difficult time. He doesn't take the time to really differentiate what he means between affirmative action and DEI. He's very comfortable allowing other conservatives and people that he talks to and shit that he watches conflate DEI and affirmative action, especially failed affirmative action policies from places like colleges, get those equated together, mashed up, and then he we'll put this out there. So can it be unfair? Affirmative action policies can. I don't really think affirmative action was unfair. Affirmative action started along with DEI in the sense that the idea is to attempt to remind people to look past any potential biases and evaluate the person based on merit. Don't shut them out just because they belong to a group that you don't particularly like. Like what a lot of white women were just rejected because they couldn't possibly be as good at the job as a lot of men because of how they were born.
Number 12, I believe that Jesus left earth by rising above sea level and vanishing into the heavens. Likewise, he will return from the heavens riding a white horse.
Would fundamentalists have a hard time with that? I mean, maybe the horse part, but I don't know that. I don't know why they would. I don't know why fundamentalists would have a hard time admitting that God physically rose into the sky when that's what one of the accounts says. So again, I really don't understand this. These are Doug is attempting to say, like, he's basically just using these things. Like, are you serious? You really think there was a talking snake? Yes, they do. Do you really think that Balaam's ass was a talking donkey? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Do they have trouble admitting it? No, not in my experience. I don't know who Doug's talking to. And I don't know if he just put this in here because what he's hoping to do, I think, by being plain spoken and no BS, is try to put these groups together and be like, here's something. I can come up with 15 things that I think Fundie Christians have a hard time admitting to. And in the same way, I can come up with 15 statements that progressives would. And in this way, what Doug is showing is that his massive brain is able to create 15 dismissive, out of context statements that essentially put these two groups that he is at odds with online in their place. And he hasn't done that. Because for the most part, I haven't really seen him give Fundie Christians anything difficult, with the exception of maybe the one about the husband, stoning his wife or something. So.
Number 13, I believe that some climate change solutions can harm the poor.
Sure. Like carbon taxes, which are not universally accepted or approved by a lot of left wing or even just center left or center groups that are concerned with, although a lot of center ones would be concerned with climate change actions. But so I believe some climate change can harm, they could. Yeah. And I'm a progressive. I would have no problem admitting that could happen, especially if the climate change solution, there are plenty of climate change solutions that are already on offer that aren't even available for the poor to take advantage of, even when they provided financial advantages. So, like, car technology that got you better gas mileage. At first it was hybrid vehicles. They were prohibitively expensive for people in certain income brackets compared to just getting a regular internal combustion engine vehicle. Now they've kind of become equal in that all cars seem to be ridiculously expensive now. But now things like Tesla EVs and things like that, who do you see normally driving those? Upper middle class to wealthy. And they're saving money on gas. They do have to plug those things in and get some wattage from somewhere, but yeah, maybe the poor could benefit from that. But that's one of those private market solutions to climate change that definitely didn't really have the poor in mind.
Number 13, I believe God, and Jesus is God, has sent powerful delusions to people so they believe lies. Number 14.
I think that one he might have. That one he might have on there with for some fundamentalist Christians. They might have to do some tap dancing on whether or not they actually literally believe that that's true. Some wouldn't. But I still think you'd get a mixed bag out of that. So to say, like, this is just something that universally Fundie Christians would have a problem with this, I don't think it's universally the case. So, all right.
I believe that whether it ever happens or not, a healthy mother doesn't have the bodily autonomy to abort a healthy 7-month baby, excluding cases of rape or incest.
Excluding rape or incest. So he would be for it. That's the purpose of an elective abortion, one of the many right there. So, I mean, viability matters. Most abortions at that stage are for several medical reasons. They're not for elective choice anyway. This is one of those things where Doug has gotten, I think, probably bewildered by the arguments being made from a lot of pro the pro-life, the anti-abortion side. It's one thing to be against elective abortion, to want restrictions on abortion. It's another thing to say that you want harsh restrictions, even zero tolerance for medical abortions. And for most women who are going to be in a situation where they've got a 7-month-old baby, and an abortion is a viable solution to preserve her life, does she still have the bodily? So that's the trick. So if Doug believes this statement, I believe a healthy mother doesn't have bodily autonomy to abort a healthy 7-month baby. Medicine would say that this is completely wrong. If a healthy mother, right, is now he's saying it's a healthy baby, so he's just going with the elective ones, right? If you change this to there's a reason why at 7 months that this needs to be a thing, then the doctor would be like, look, you need to make a choice now, your life or the baby's. If he's trying to say a mother doesn't have a bodily autonomy to abort a healthy 7-month baby, what you're talking about is elective abortion, not medical abortion, elective abortion up to any stage. I don't know that many people agree with that. I personally don't agree with that either. If the child is healthy and it's viable and the mother has carried it to that point, an abortion isn't necessary. And it really shouldn't be allowed at that stage. If the mother is not interested in being the mother to that child, at that point, they're looking at probably having to give the child up for adoption. Medical advocates for this would say the same thing. They're not going to allow a woman who is healthy to elect to terminate a 7-month-old pregnancy that doesn't have any issues. That's not usually allowed in most states. Most states have at least that restriction on it. But the issue with bringing up this particular question is that because the viability issue is there, what often ends up happening, the doctors aren't allowed to really consider abortion in saving the life of the mother, because the mother is banned from elective abortions. The doctors are restricted from medically necessary abortions too. So that's just a goofy one to even bring up. I don't think most progressives have an issue with that statement on abortion.
Number 14, I believe Jesus is an exorcist who caused demons to leave a man and go into 2,000 pigs.
Why would fundamentalist Christians have a hard time with that? That is I was a fundamentalist Christian. That is a kick-ass story. If you are Team Jesus, that is a cool story. The fact that it's also true, even cooler. So he's just wrong there. That's not something that they would find hard to admit. Does he mean hard to believe?
Lastly, for the woke progressives, I believe that human rights come from humans, and that men primarily give human rights to women.
Why? I mean, I don't have a problem with admitting the first part. Human rights come from humans. We negotiate rights amongst ourselves. And that men, but he thinks that we know this to be true, but we struggle to admit it. It's hard to admit. But men give rights to women. This completely short circuits what those are, right? If human rights come from humans, then humans are negotiating what we believe our rights are. That negotiation is happening between men and women. What Doug thinks is that everyone knows the negotiation is happening at the chamber of men, and when the meeting's over, they come out and they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, ladies, here are your rights. Here's some hand-me-down human rights for y'all." As if women do not have a say in this. I would have a problem. I don't have any problem admitting to this. This is Doug trying to find some weird way with the second part of the sentence to put words in the mouths of progressives for reasons I don't really understand, other than to basically just this one really makes me aware of the fact that Doug really doesn't have a lot of respect for women, just in general, or people in general, because he seems to think that progressives, men or women, deep down, this is what they think is going on.
And finally, I believe that men were created for the glory of God, but women were created for the glory of men.
So that's it. His annoying song comes up, and that's the end of it. So, yeah. So basically, nothing really is what happened. Not much of anything there. Let's see. Let's grab this. Jason, huh? Are you saying that Doug combs his hair with a coat hanger? I think that's probably too fine-toothed for it. All right. Human rights don't come from donkeys. I'm sorry to tell to rain on your parade there. Doug spoof over? Yeah, it's over. The hell does that even mean? Yeah, who knows? I think Nate is in the chat, but I haven't seen him. Anyway, good to see you, Nate. I saw Doug made, if Nate is listening, I saw Doug made a short video about him. Again, I'm going to watch that one, but that puts this one on just a little over 50 minutes. So I think that's a pretty good length. I want to say thank you for everybody in the chat. I'm going to wrap this thing up. Yeah, thanks for joining me live for this. And I talked to him yesterday. He sucked. Well, I'll be getting proof of that later when I go to check it out. I do want to, at some point, I know there's a time difference and all that, you being over in the UK, if you do want to have a chat about PineCreek's increasing rightward turn towards the more cartoonish side of American right-wing insanity, hit me up on Discord. It takes me forever to respond on that, or shoot me an email, or I'll maybe I can send you one. But yeah, if you're interested, if you're not, it's not a big deal. He didn't like me talking about Second Amendment rights and Trump challenging the Constitution. He didn't like you talking. Why? Because you're not from here? That's a lot of brass coming from somebody who just got stamped American like a year or two ago. I mean, some of these people should never have been allowed across the border. We need a wall. That's got him and his audience very upset. Oh, I'm not just going to watch the video clip that he edited then. I'm going to go back, find that live stream, and find that part and take a look. Good show. Good to see you, Peter. Good show. But an email exchange with Jill has better visuals. Correction. An email exchange between Jill and you has better visuals. I do not offer the same visuals in my email exchanges that you do. And for anybody that would like an example of that, please speak to Peter. Gonna go for it. I'm just thankful that I've never upset Peter in any real way. Upset Doug sounds fun. Doug admitted that he got upset at Randall Rouser once back in the day. So if you go back in time about 5 years, maybe 6, you can find a video with him. I think he gets a little perturbed. I don't know why. I think he and Randall Rouser just don't. They got the kind of personality clash kind of thing. So the dog whistling by Nate was so funny. Yeah, I'll be checking this out. All right. Well, enough meandering. Thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you, Nate, for being here. Special shout out, and thank you, Peter, for showing up. It's been a long time since I've seen you in a live chat, but I have been trying to catch your work when I can. And when YouTube actually sends me a notification that you're on, I've been subscribed to you for a while. I don't know, the dreaded algorithm is being creepy again. Doug's not dead inside. Apparently not. like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or anything for me, let me know. jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com. Share and do all that good stuff. I will be coming back, probably doing some more. I've been working on pre-recorded stuff, probably pre-record and release something as a premiere now that I know how to do that correctly rather than through the Streamlabs software I've been using and getting it wrong. Probably do another Darth one and then come back with another Pine Creek one in a bit. And then I've got some ideas for some live shows that I'd like to do later in the month or next month. So with that, I will catch you all later. You'll catch one of my videos around here, but I hope to see you all again for a live video real soon. So take care, everybody. I am going to get out of here.